computers were invented a few decades ago, you may want to think again. This corroded lump of wheels and gears is actually a 2,000-year-old calculator that we use to make complex astronomical predictions. This particular artifact was recovered from an ancient Greek shipwreck long ago. But now a scientist in Woods Hole is using new technology to explore the shipwreck site and see what other secrets it may reveal. WGBH News science editor Heather Goldstone has been in touch with the team and joins me now. Welcome, Heather.
Good to be here.
So this shipwreck was actually discovered about a century ago. Why do we care about it now?
Well, the short answer to the why now question is because we can and because it's exciting. So the wreck is known as the Antikythera wreck, and that's because if you look at a map, this ship went down in the 1st century BC just off this tiny Greek island in the Mediterranean called Antikythera. And the shipwreck is just about 50 meters, about 150 feet offshore, but it's in 150 to 200 feet of water, so it's too deep for divers to get there easily.
Sink? Do you know?
Well, there's actually a couple other small wrecks in the area. It's kind of a treacherous area, especially if it's stormy. And actually, the research team has been getting a taste of that this week. They've had 4 straight days of hurricane-strength winds, huge pounding surf. They haven't been able to dive. They haven't been able to do a lot of their own research for the past few days. So, potentially treacherous area. But this ship is incredibly, incredibly rich. It's been called the richest ancient shipwreck ever found. Seems to have been loaded with all of the highest quality goods they could lay their hands on from not only the 1st century BC, but the preceding century or two before that.
Well, tell me about that century-old or 1,000-year-old, whatever it is, computer, 2,000 years old.
Yeah, so it's called the Antikythera Mechanism, again, because of where the shipwreck was found. And a little over a century ago, sponge divers, who were notoriously very adventuresome in how far they would try to dive, saw something on the bottom, went to investigate, and pulled up this thing that it took a while to figure out what it actually is, and it's a geared mechanism, very complicated geared mechanism. I think we have a picture of it, actually. You can see that's what the artifact looked like when they brought it up, and they've created a reconstruction, which you can see here, where there are actually all these gears and dials that would have been turned to be able to predict, make astronomical predictions, which clearly could have been very important for navigation and shipping.
So it's almost like a weather. It's a combination weather navigator.
Not so much the weather, but looking at the stars, where the constellation, where the stars would be for navigation at that point. And it's the most complicated and the oldest kind of calculator or computer like this that we've ever found. Jacques Cousteau went back to the wreck in the 1960s, actually dredged and then pulled up artifacts, which is not what we would call responsible archaeology today, but it was a different time. And so he pulled up a bunch of artifacts. And between that, I mean, it's just this intriguing picture of a really laden ship, but it's really hard to get back to.
Well, if it's been that picked over, what is Woods Hole hoping to find there now?
Well, so they've gone back and said, well, there was that much there. We don't know what we might have missed if we had the technology to look more closely. And so they're back on site with some really cutting edge technology. What they did manage to do last week, and they sent us some video of this operation, is they actually put a vehicle in the water. You can see it there with the propellers. And it was basically swimming or flying over the wreck site and taking pictures at a very high frequency and high resolution. And they turned this into an enormous photo mosaic of the whole site. Well, what you can see just from this video is that there's not a lot of shipwreck to see, right? It got dredged, it's rocky, everything's buried in there. So they've also gone back with divers and metal detectors, and they've gone over the site again, and they've gotten some very strong hits of a metal signature from underneath the sand. They've done side scan and other sonar maps, and putting that all together, they think that perhaps they've had their whole idea about how the ship is even sitting there wrong, that what they thought was the bow might actually be the stern, and there's an undisturbed area that what they didn't think was part of the wreck that they now think might be part of the wreck. So they've got all these tantalizing clues, and what they're hoping to do, and you've got to see this suit to believe it, they've got this suit called the exosuit, which is like a space suit with a jetpack on the back to boot.
My gosh.
Right. And they've got this suit, they're ready to rendezvous with it when the weather permits. It would allow them unlimited time down on the bottom because the person that's inside it isn't feeling any of the effects of the pressure. And so they were in Woods Hole this summer training to use this suit, and they're hoping to be able to get out there and actually try to see what some of these signals are and see what might be in those undisturbed areas that have never been looked at
Rather him than me. So what kind of a ship was it? What was it carrying?
Well, it might have been actually carrying kind of the spoils of war. It might have been an extremely wealthy collector, essentially. But as I said, it was laden with a whole range of things. Those metal hits might actually be bronze sculptures, which would be very valuable because if it was on land, even with the Antikythera Mechanism, this computer, you would think we would see others like that, and we haven't found them. And they think that's in part because the metal was so valuable that almost any metal on land was melted down for other purposes. So this is a really potentially unique insight into that period in history.
Very cool. Right. Heather Goldstone, thank you so much. Very cool.